Christian Pende-Kokaf, ex-detainee and ally of Professor Maurice Kamto, leader of the Agi movement, says that the announced organization of the municipal and legislative elections February 2020 is a confirmation of the cessation of the Republic of Cameroon. He says this with regards to the unstable socio-political and security situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And of course, in this newscast, we'll also be talking about efforts by governments of African countries to enhance healthcare delivery across the continent. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Bablet Jonathan. We begin with news concerning the announced organization of municipal and legislative elections in the Republic of Cameroon for February 2020, and that will be, of course, next year. The head of state has made this information published, and political leaders have been reacting. One of them, Christian Pende-Kokaf, speaking to us yesterday in the program La Vérité en Face on Equinoxe Television, said organizing elections in the present context is synonymous to dividing the country with regards to the unstable socio-political and security situation of the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And he says that in the present context, such elections cannot be organized in those two regions, the northwest and the southwest regions of the country. Take a listen to Christian Pende-Kokaf, ex-detainee, ally of Professor Maurice Kamto during the October 2018 presidential election in Cameroon.
Useless. Because almost useless.
Why?
What is the priority now?
Why was
the priority now is the election. He has called for the elections. He has called for the legislative and the municipal elections. That was the priority. That was among the recommendations of the Grand Dialogue, organizing the elections. You are living in a state of insecurity. You are living in a state of instability. And we have no peace in this country, neither up north nor in the southwest or in the northwest. And you organize the election. That was the priority now. Wasn't it to reconcile? Wasn't it to get all the people together? Wasn't it the reconciliation of Cameroonians? To build a kind of confidence among Cameroonians? And when you build it, and then you try to get people, you know, is not actually responding to anything the population, is not concerned by the population needs and aspirations. Is not concerned by political parties' needs, claims, and aspirations. Is not even concerned by what the international community is telling him. What the international community say after that dialogue? The international community say, okay, this is a good step, this is a good start, but we need to go towards more inclusive dialogue. Did he address that? Did he address that observation? Did he address but now it's calling for election. You know what? You know what is going to happen? What is going to happen that actually people can just become much more radicalized, because it just looked like the man is not being concerned by what you're suffering, by the suffering of the population.
Christian Pende-Kokaf,
yes.
Beyond dialogue, or the national dialogue, which you think that it was not inclusive because of the absence of leaders like Sisiku Ayuktabe and the other 9, people like Mancho BBC, Terence Penn, Conrad, and the others who have been detained in connection to the Anglophone crisis. Beyond the national dialogue, something that the President of the Republic should negotiate with Sisiku Ayuktabe and the other leaders. Not just dialogue, but he should negotiate with them. What do you think about this?
But negotiation is also discussion. You can negotiate, of course. You should discuss your issues. It's like a family. There is an issue. What is our difference? Why we are not in agreement? We discuss about the issue. You're not just putting people in jail. By the time you notice that, you have some people, very respectable people. They are leaders. They are political leaders. Those people, some of them are professors like, Awasum is professor of surgery in Ayola University, Fidelis, professor of electrical engineering, Ayola American University, Ayola. Ayub Tabe is vice president of the American University, Ayola. They're very serious people. So if they're very serious people, you need to negotiate with them. If they're saying that there's something wrong in this mechanism, then you just call upon them. You don't hide yourself. You don't isolate yourself from your people. If something is not going on, it's like a family. Don't hide yourself. You just discuss with them to see what is the root cause of the problem, to try to find the solution, to try to find the root remedy for it.
Security prison following his arrest within the context of the 2018 post-election crisis in the Republic of Cameroon, and he's an ally of Professor Maurice Kamto of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. He came second in the last presidential election in the Republic of Cameroon, and he was speaking to us in La Vérité en Face on Equinoxe television yesterday. He was speaking there on the national dialogue organized by the President of the Republic. He thinks that it was simply useless organizing that event, and that it was not inclusive enough due to the absence of leaders of Anglophones like Sisiku, Ayuk Tabe, and the other 9 Anglophone leaders detained in the prison center in the Yaoundé, and of course people like Mancho, BBC, Conrad, and of course Penn Terence, and all others who are detained in connection to the Anglophone crisis. And I told you earlier that talking about the upcoming municipal and legislative elections announced for February 2020, he says that organizing that election in the present, or those elections in the present context, is synonymous to dividing Cameroon, or better still, confirming the secession of Cameroon. Take a listen to Christian Pendekoka. Can elections take place in the present context with regards to the situation, particularly in the northwest and southwest?
But this is exactly, Jonathan, this is exactly what I'm saying. This is elections of proximity. This is an election of proximity. This is an election about the people electing the MP, the member of parliament. This is an election about people, electing the MP. This is election about electing the councillor, the municipal councillors. So if I'm really a responsible government, what I have to do, I have to ensure that those elections are going to take place in such a way that, that the people from the northwest and the southwest can really participate into it. The way you're trying to do it now, not ensuring that, it means that you are clearly enacting the separation, the secession of the country.
Christian Pendekoka speaking there on the organization of the upcoming municipal and legislative elections announced by the head of state for February next year, and political actors have equally been reacting on the organization of that or those elections. And for me, Armstrong Sander compiled their views in this report. For me, Armstrong Sander with a compilation of reactions of political leaders in the Republic of Cameroon, reactions to the announced organization of municipal and legislative elections next year. Many of them simply think that it is not proper to organize elections in the present context with regards to the deepening Anglophone crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, because they think that the election is not going to be effective in those two regions hit by crisis for close to 3 years today. For me, Armstrong Sander has more. We'll be coming back to that report in a short while. In the meantime, we're going over to Bakassi Peninsula in the southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, where our correspondent Derek Jato tells us that a school has been swallowed by the sea. His report.
Picture of government secondary school Idabatu in 2016.
Behind me is the lone government secondary school of Idabatu subdivision, almost colonized by the Atlantic Ocean.
And 3 years later,
this is what is left of government secondary school Idabatu. The Atlantic Ocean has swallowed the whole structure, and even the rubbles here, the sea is threatening to take everything away.
Isifuyeke, the community chief, took me round to see what nature has done.
My cry for this school
Everything is gone the community leader pointed. And even this foundation will soon be carried away by the sea.
Now the children they're not going to school. Many of them they go for Nigeria. Many of them they not go to school. They just do like that. We want to make them go to school.
Our children are out of school, and we plead for the construction of another school.
We dey talk for government for separate time to help us build another school. Even though 3 classes will make the people they see way to put head. We get erosion. Every day with the build house, we don't tire.
The erosion is a threat to us. The sea is destroying our houses. The danger is already on his doorsteps. This chief's palace seems to have been marked for demolition by the Atlantic Ocean. The chief's palace is just meters from when the now gone government secondary school Edabatu was planted. And this community leader is helpless. The Cameroon government had long figured out what needs to be done to fight back, but no implementation, while the sea on her part has been steadily implementing her mission to erase and claim this island.
Nothing there. Water don't scatter our school, no get school. They don't come tell us the embankment. Since 1900, they wait until today, will not see anything.
Government secondary school Edabatu is gone. The sea is now on this primary school. Government school Edabatu, still along the same seashore. Presently, water is already occupying all the rooms at this teacher's quarter as a strategy. The signs and signals are there. The announcement is loud enough and the outcome is obvious. If nothing is done, the staff quarters, this primary school, and the chief's palace will go the same way. Government secondary school Edabatu and the gendarmerie post went. All happening before the very eyes of everyone in this oil-rich peninsula of Bakassi.
And I told you earlier, the presidential decree announcing the municipal and legislative elections in the Republic of Cameroon for next year is dividing the political landscape in the Republic of Cameroon. Some, notably those of the opposition, think that it is not proper to organize elections in the present socio-political and security context, notably in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon, while others, notably those of the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM political party, are already campaigning. For me, Armstrong Sander has more.
Following the presidential decree convening electorates for the legislative and municipal elections on January 9, 2020, diverse reactions have been captured from politicians and political parties in Cameroon. To Honorable Jean-Michel Ninchu, President Paul Biya, by that decision, has thrown oil on the fire of the country's burning secessionist attempts. On his Facebook page, the Member of Parliament said President Paul Biya has just announced independence through the decree. Writing further, he said the unfortunate Suicide Act for the country in view of the country's current socio-political context goes to convene even the most skeptic who still believe in him of the multiple negative signs that he has never stopped to commit during his long and hateful stay in power. The Member of Parliament of the Social Democratic Front, like his party, says it is totally impossible to organize elections in Cameroon at a time when the greater part of the country is buried in insecurity. In a similar opinion, the Cameroon People's Party, through its Secretary General, says no to elections in Cameroon. The party thinks what Cameroonians want now is the renaissance of Cameroon, the reawakening of its institutions, reforming the form of states in Cameroon, engaging in national reconciliation and resolving the Anglophone crisis. The CPP is categorically against all elections without a remake of Cameroon and is ready to push further for this stand. Ali Sajo of the APF party says the security atmosphere in the Anglophone regions that triggered the postponement of these elections has not improved. She says her party plans to meet and communicate an official position. Contrastingly, another political class immediately dashed into campaigns after the announcement by President Paul Biya. To Barrister Michelle Ndoki, it will be a moment for truth for those who believe she is engaged with the people. She said the time for the union is February 2020 and she will be honored to be called a parliamentarian. Speaking to supporters, Cabral Libi said the convened election is an opportunity for them to demonstrate what they have been doing on the field since 2nd of January 2019. He thinks he and followers can use the opportunity to correct the errors of 2018. Serge Espoir Matomba of Pius Party appears on a banner calling on his supporters to join him on Operation 300 Councils and 100 members of parliament in 2020. As the opposition remains divided over the convened elections, Barrister Emmanuel Pensi says President Paul Biya is on a legal and right path, noting that the opposition is not unanimous on why elections should or should not be organized in Cameroon. The legal mind challenged Cameroonians to go to the polls on February 9, 2020.
Workers of the electricity distribution company Sonatrel are already working on the area in Deido here in the economic capital Douala, where a transformer exploded or caught fire yesterday. Until now, electricity has not returned to a good part of that neighborhood of Cameroon's economic capital, and a new transformer is already at the site and will be set up by the workers of Sonatrel, who are working to ensure that electricity returns to that neighborhood. But until now, there is still the people are still in dark. The people are still in darkness. The people of Deido in the Douala 1 municipality, the workers are on ground trying to solve that problem as soon as possible. Now we're going to talk about efforts of governments of African countries to improve on healthcare delivery. Experts and stakeholders from different parts of the continent are meeting here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, in order to discuss on how to enhance healthcare delivery across the continent, and also the implementation of the universal health coverage policy. Details in this report compiled by Hemin Iluga.
In several remote parts of Cameroon, inhabitants do not have access to public health care services. Some have to cover kilometers to the nearest health facility. Others die on the long and difficult journey from their homes to the hospital. Many of the country's health amenities, including major hospitals, are poorly equipped, and healthcare delivery is often characterized by flaws that lead to health complications and sometimes the death of patients.
You are right, everything is not perfect, and it is not expected that the UHC will be implemented in an ideal environment. What is extremely important is the movement, and also knowing that it is a progressive effort. UHC will be implemented for several years.
The health system in Africa has a lot of issues and challenges. One of them, the key one, is actually governance and leadership. Because this determines whether the country undertakes implementation of the strategies that they identify. If there is no strong leadership and governance, normally the strategies are done, but they are not implemented. So it's a big issue. And then also the issue of financing is another one, because without money, and not only availability of money, but able to allocate the money where it really makes a difference, is a big issue.
Conversed in Douala in the 4th annual health sector directors of planning and policy meeting, these experts and stakeholders from across Africa are discussing health systems strengthening for universal health coverage and sustainable development goals.
Implementing universal health coverage is a complex issue. It requires a lot of actions along the different elements of the health system. Moving from governance, health financing, human resources, infrastructure, availability of medicine.
The objective of this meeting is really to bring together the countries, which are the member states, and assess how far we are going in terms of progress towards universal health coverage, share experiences and learn from each other, and then see how to move forward in terms of advancing UHC and sustainable development goals.
In his opening speech, Cameroon's Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malachi, said government is stepping up efforts to enhance healthcare delivery in the country in the fight against the illegal sale of drugs on roads, cities and villages. The latter is a problem that has resisted government's crackdown for several years.
And we asked Dr. Fanuel Habimana, a representative of the World Health Organization in Cameroon, what he thinks about the efforts of the Cameroon government to improve on healthcare delivery across the country. And this is an extract of what he said.
Regarding Cameroon, a lot has taken place, of course, in the country. There is a lot of work that has been going on regarding the definition of the package that needs to be offered. The population, the targeted population, the capacity of contribution of Cameroonians. There is a working group championed by the Ministry of Finance to look at what is the capacity of financing in a sustainable manner of the package to implement the UHC, but also the investment needed to improve what we used to call the plateau technique and human resources, so that the population of Cameroon can access quality of health services. So all this is going on, and as the minister has just said, it is really a matter of time when the population will be informed of the launch of a universal health coverage in Cameroon. The purpose is, as again he said, the country will move progressively. You cannot expect everyone everywhere receiving all the care that they need. So there is a package that has been defined, and progressively people will be receiving this package. The contribution coming from the population have been estimated, but also I must indicate that the government of Cameroon has honored itself in putting a special focus towards protecting the vulnerable population, in looking at how do we finance the needs of this population.
That was Dr. Fanuel Habimana, representative of the World Health Organization in Cameroon. Coming up next is Talking Point. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us in Talking Point. We are receiving an alternative conflict management expert. He is also the Deputy Programs Coordinator of the Mbororo Cultural Association, Boskuda, and also the Monitoring and Policy Officer. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sali Usmanu, for joining us in this edition of The Inside. You live in the northwest region of the country. What's the situation there with regards to the Anglophone crisis?
Well, the situation in the northwest region is still very precarious, as I can say. Why? Because there is token return to calmness. I say token because in some areas it's still, there are sporadic attacks of the non-state armed people and also the government forces. So definitely we are living in a milieu whereby you always, it's a surprise in the morning if you don't find somebody dead on the street.
And you are living there. How are you managing to cope with the gun battles, the gunshots, and destruction of properties happening in those two regions? How are the people there managing to survive?
In conflict, there are always techniques that you use to manage. So we are becoming receptive to it, and we are used to it as a way of life. So in fact it has been challenging, especially on days of these shutdowns, because it's difficult to go to work, but all the same we have ways in which you cross-check and be sure of the situation before you move out of your house in the morning.
All right. And like every other person, you are expecting an end to this, to the killings, to the destruction of properties, the gun battles going on in the two regions, the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon?
Yes, actually it's true, because you see, destruction of property has made it very, very difficult, especially with the Mbororo minorities. You see, they are targeted as sometimes they are not very well situated in the conflict, because you hardly find them saying that they are active in it or they are not. So sometimes the separatists attack them and seize their cattle for ransom. And, it's becoming so rampant that, you know.
Why are they targeted? Is it just because they are neutral, they are not for or against anything?
No, I think they are, what I can say is that they are neutral in the sense that they are on the fence. They are neither with the struggle and neither against the struggle. You know, they are just caught in the cross position whereby, you know, they find themselves in a conflict area. And because first of all, you know, there are people who are also involved in decision-making arenas, and in fact, it has made them just to be subjects of exploitation from, you know.
How frequent is cattle theft in the northwest region of the country?
Well, for cattle theft, I can say it has really abated in the sense that, you know, now the situation is that which, if cattle are stolen or whatsoever, the matter is handed over to the non-state armed guys, and you know, the treatment that they give to those people is really very, very deplorable, and I can say it has abated.
No, besides the Anglophone crisis, the socio-political and security tensions in the two Anglophone regions, there are also conflicts between Bororos and non-Boro indigenes of some parts of the northwest region. What has been happening all this while? What is generating the conflict?
Yeah, generally, you know, the struggle over the use of resources like land and water are generally the main sources of conflict. Either you find cattle trespassing into farmland or farmers encroaching into grazing land. That's the root cause of the conflict. And in fact, we have been mounting projects and working on alternative conflict management techniques for quite some time.
What is the intensity of these conflicts? How frequent are the conflicts?
I
and
think
what are some of the consequences?
Based on the evaluation of our last project, the conflicts have reduced. According to the project evaluation, which was done by an expert, conflicts have reduced by 10%, which for us is really a very significant stride. Why? Because this is an endemic problem that all of us know that it has taken a very long time and is still there. Insofar as the population is increasing and pressure on land is increasing, conflicts are bound to be there.
And grazing land is also diminishing.
Yeah, diminishing, you know, priority. Yeah, so definitely conflicts are going to be there. But the important thing is how these conflicts are managed. Because currently we are using what is known as the alternative conflict management approach, which is actually trying to take these structural causes of the conflict and address them, rather than going to the superficial causes. When I talk of structural causes, I'm referring here to the conflicting parties being at the center of the resolution of their conflict, whereby community-based dialogue platforms are established and they mediate and negotiate and solve the conflicts by themselves. So taking that ownership of the conflict, I think is really a very good stride in solving the problems which are always there.
So what have you been doing all this in the context of this project that you're talking about, in the context of the efforts to make sure that the conflicts either reduce to minimum or do not occur at all?
Well, let me go into the context of a current project that we are implementing that is referred to as safeguarding peace and human rights by promoting intercultural dialogue in the Northwest region. With this particular project, which is being sponsored by the European Union and some key partners abroad, which is also United Purpose, there are a number of actions that are being built on from the evaluation of the last project that we did. For example, the main issue there is to influence public decisions to be more responsive in terms of recognizing these minorities. First of all, I think it would be very important for me to even give a background for people who may hear it for their first time about Bororos in the Northwest.
Go ahead, please.
Bororo people are actually coming from a very large ethnic group known as the Full Base, who are found in 25 countries in Africa. And they fall in 3 subgroups. You have the Jafun, which is the red cattle. You have the Aku, who are the white cattle, and you have the Wodabe, who are also the red cattle. But Wodabe are mostly in the north region of Cameroon. So in the northwest, the Bororos constitute about 9% of the population of the northwest. And you see, they are always considered as strangers in their own land because they live there, they are born there, but you know, they always try to consider.
Why are they considered as strangers?
Well, it's because, you know, their livelihood activity is grazing, and they are mostly at the fringes of villages. Why do they live in the fringes? Is because they need grazing land. They need vast grazing land, which is becoming an issue, where they can graze their cattle. So based on this, as the population is increasing, these conflicts are becoming more intense because there is need for food and there is need for grazing. So what I can say is that
the farmers are struggling to grow their crops, and the grazers are struggling to feed the cattle.
Yeah, so you see, struggling to feed people and struggling to feed the cattle is an issue. If you hear me talking about a project which has a cultural dimension, it's because in the course of resolutions of farmer-grazer problems, we discovered that if the cultural issue, that is people having cultural tolerance, is not there, it might not be very feasible to really solve a problem. Because if you understand my culture as a Boroman cattle rearing, I understand our culture as farming, you know, we understand ourselves, there is a possibility of us to live, to safeguard peace within the way we live together. All of us have right to the land, and, you know,
understanding and tolerating each other.
Yes, exactly. So tolerance on the culture will definitely be it's a key issue of what we are trying to address, because that dimension has a human face of the conflict. Why? Because you see, that is from there that prejudice come, stereotype. Just, you know, if you understand me, like, you know, generally they consider the Boro people as fierce in the sense that they are moving with a knife, they are moving with a stick, and the essence is that it's for fighting, but that's not the case. If you understand the Bororo culture, you'll know that from the culture of cattle rearing, they are definitely bound to be moving with a walking stick, so that when an animal becomes aggressive, you can repel it.
Or when another animal attacks.
Yes, and the animal is about to die, you have to slaughter it. So you see, the knife and walking stick are not actually weapons as people misinterpret, because this cultural misunderstanding and misinterpretations is also a very big driver to conflicts. And that is
so what have you been doing to educate the people, the local indigenous, non-Bororo inhabitants of the different localities in the northwest and the Bororos, because it's from both sides. There is need for education from what you're seeing, in order for tolerance and you know, understanding to be part and parcel of their daily lives, to avoid the conflicts. What are you doing to reconcile?
Actually, what we are doing is that in the communities where these conflicts have really abated or have gone down, there is what is called a dialogue platform. A dialogue platform is a community-based organization that is made up of cattle rearers and farmers. So these are people who have been mediating and negotiating the conflicts, to an extent that very little conflicts now go to the administration, especially in areas where those dialogue platforms are very, very functional. We have about 47 of them in the northwest region that we have been working with in communities. So what we are doing now to ensure that this cultural dimension of these conflicts is resolved is that we are extending these dialogue platforms to have cultural dimension. When I talk of cultural dimension here, is that there are platforms now whereby they are educative and sensitizing the communities on the various cultures. Like the Boro people use the opportunity to understand the culture of the other ethnic groups,
other communities,
and the other ethnic groups use the opportunity to understand the culture of the Bororos. Because immediately that understanding is there, you know, tolerance can breed on it and grow very well. So that is one aspect. The second one is that there are issues known as, in some communities where we have what is known as alliance farming. Alliance farming is a collaboration between farmers and grazers whereby they have all mutual benefits, in the sense that you have cattle, you have land where I can come and graze them. They will come, you construct a fence, then the grazer brings his cattle there, and the area becomes so fertilized.
Okay, the cattle come and live within the fence now, yes, for a period of time.
Exactly.
They release some feces that will constitute manure, and then after that, they leave the area and the farmer comes in.
So you see, when the farmer now cultivates that area, it will be very fertile. Both of them have benefited. The grazer has benefited from crop residues that were in that fallowed land, and now the farmer too has benefited from the land being fertilized, and you see it's working very well, and those are benefits that are helping to reduce these conflicts. So those are some of the issues that we are trying now to do, which are really like ways to reduce the farmer-grazer conflicts in the Northwest region.
All right, and before we go out, I want you to comment on these. There are accusations, and the Bororos who are targeted within the context of the Anglophone crisis, accusations of them playing the role of informants for the security and defense forces, giving out information to the security and defense forces, and these are some of the things that are highlighted to kind of justify why they are being targeted. What do you have to say about this?
Okay, I think good enough you have used the word allegation, which is still an allegation is something that is still just like what people are saying. It's an assumption. To me, I roll out that they don't really act as middlemen between the population and the army. Why? Because you see, they too, especially in areas where we have worked, you see, they too, they are part of this community. So playing a middleman role there is really very risky. So I really don't accept that.
Earlier you said they are neutral.
Yes, they are neutral.
Neither on the left, neither on the right.
Neutrality here is that it's because of their level. They are not so active in most of those issues. And another issue is that these are people who have a certain culture which people need to understand, known as a culture of silence. Bororos have a culture of silence, which means that it has 4 key elements in that culture of silence: fortitude against adversity, the ability to accept misfortune, they are reserved and limited in personal relationships.
And public action.
In public action, that is how they are. Generally, that is a culture that people who are non-Bororos need to understand. And it's purely a culture of the Bororos, this culture of silence that I'm talking about. So from that perspective, you can imagine that they are not active in all what is going on. And another issue is that there are people whose livelihood is actually based on cattle rearing. And with the cattle, they know that without their farming neighbors, life too will be very hard for them. So, yeah.
All right. Salih Usman, Alternative Conflict Management. Do you have a last word before we go?
Yes, you see, all these actions that we are doing in the Northwest, especially our organization, Moskuda, they are complementing tools already in place by the government. Farmer-grazer conflict sees the degree 78 of 2/263 of July 3, 1978, that provides for the Agro-Pastoral Commission. Whenever there is an whenever there is farmer-grazer problem, that's the guiding degree that is used. But you see, that particular degree is paying attention on compensation for the crop damages, but not paying attention to
solving and
preventing the problem. Good enough now, as they are taking ownership of the problem from these dialogue platforms that we have created, they are now working out ways of conflict prevention. Because in conflict management, until you reach that level of conflict prevention, you have not gone anywhere. Because the more you are there always to wait for spontaneous conflicts to arise and you solve them, it's not enough. You must work out ways to prevent the conflicts.
In order to avoid irreparable consequences.
Exactly. So you see, and we should all be conscious of the fact that Cameroon has voted the United Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and Bororos fall within that. But they have not yet ratified the International Labour Organization Convention 169. So, which means that the Bororos are still not so considered as indigenous people.
All right. You're sending a message to government to ratify that legal instrument.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much, Sali Usman, Alternative Conflict Management. Thanks for coming. Alternative Conflict Management expert. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.